The private jet glistened under the scorching Miami sun. Marcus Whitmore adjusted his Cartier glasses and watched the line of passengers forming on the tarmac. Impeccable gray hair, a tailored Italian suit, a watch that cost more than a house. At 58, the real estate billionaire had built an empire and an ego to match. Then he saw her. A plus-size woman crossed the asphalt with firm steps, hand luggage in the direction of her jet, brown hair tied into a bun, professional navy blue blazer, serene expression. She walked like someone who had every right to be there. Marcus felt his blood boil. "Hey you," he shouted, hurriedly descending the jet's stairs. "This plane is not a public bus. Who the hell authorized you to get close?" The woman stopped. He looked at him unhurriedly. His brown eyes were calm, almost bored, as if he had seen that type of man 1,000 times before. "Good morning," she said, her voice firm and polite. "I'm a passenger on this shared charter flight to New York. My seat was reserved by the company." "Reserved?" Marcus laughed loudly, a harsh, cruel sound. "You're kidding, right? Look at the size of it. You can't even fit in the armchair. My plane has a standard weight limit, image to maintain." The other passengers, a couple of executives, a lawyer, a model, stopped boarding. Everyone looked. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others discreetly took out their cell phones to film. The woman didn't look away. He didn't stutter. He just took a deep breath and pulled his cell phone out of his blazer pocket. "Sir, I have my reservation receipt here. The company Skybridge Charters confirmed my boarding 3 days ago. Can I show you the email?" "Skybridge could go to shit." Marcus took 2 steps forward, invading her space. "I own this jet. I decide who gets in, and people your size don't come up here, just like that. Do you think it's bad? Process. But today you're taking an Uber, honey." Heavy silence. The model bit her lip. The lawyer looked at his shoes. The executive couple exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one said anything. Nobody ever said. Marcus continued, now in a louder voice, making sure everyone heard. "Do you know what the problem is with people like you? He thinks the world has to adapt, that everyone has to pretend that everything is fine. But I don't pretend. I speak the truth. And the truth is you can't afford to fly my plane." The woman remained still. His expression didn't change, but something flashed in his eyes. Something dangerous. Something patient. "I understand," she said, her voice low, controlled. "So you are denying me boarding based solely on my body weight, correct?" "Exactly." Marcus crossed his arms, satisfied. "You finally understand. Now get out of my lane before I call security." She nodded slowly. He put away his cell phone. He looked at the jet, then back at him, as if he were memorizing every detail, every word, every witness. "All right, Mr. Whitmore," she said, and there was something strange about the calmness of her voice. "I'll solve this another way." He turned and walked back to the terminal. Back straight, head up, no running, no crying, no begging. Marcus snorted victoriously and gestured to the remaining passengers. "Come on, guys. We took off in 15 minutes. And breathe a sigh of relief. Now there's plenty of room." Nervous laughter. Boarding resumed. The pilot, a middle-aged man with a tired expression, looked at Marcus with silent disapproval, but also said nothing. He needed the job. Inside the luxurious cabin, Marcus settled into the leather armchair, accepted a glass of champagne from the flight attendant, and sighed contentedly. Another problem solved. Another person who tried to take advantage of him and was put in his place. What Marcus Whitmore didn't know, and should have, was that this woman was named Diane Foster. She was 42 years old, divorced for 5 years, mother of a 16-year-old boy named Tyler. He lived in a modest apartment in Fort Lauderdale. He drove an old sedan. I bought clothes on sale, but he had worked for the Federal Aviation Administration for 18 years, not as an attendant, not as an assistant, not like office bureaucracy, as Chief Inspector of Civil Aviation Safety and Compliance for the Southeast region. Diane Foster had the authority to interdict aircraft, to suspend flight licenses, to investigate accidents, to prosecute jet owners who violated federal regulations, and she had just received that same morning an anonymous tip about serious irregularities on Marcus Whitmore's jet, irregularities that could cost lives. That's why it was there. That's why I booked that shared flight. To inspect discreetly, without fanfare, without raising suspicion. Marcus Whitmore had just made the costliest mistake of his life, but I didn't know that yet. As the jet took off toward New York, Diane Foster entered the T-terminal, sat down on a blue plastic chair near Gate 12 and pulled her FAA badge from the bottom of her bag. It stuck around the neck. He took a deep breath. Then he dialed a number directly to the headquarters in Washington. "Diane Foster, license plate 10447, code red. I need an immediate inspection team at Miami International Airport. Private jet, registration November 72 Tango Whiskey. Suspected security breach, illegal passenger discrimination, and possible tampering with maintenance certificates. On the other end of the line, a deep and serious voice confirmed, "Team on the way in 20 minutes. Emergency inspection order issued. Authorization to intercept and land the aircraft immediately." Diane hung up. He looked through the terminal window. Marcus's jet was already a bright spot in the blue sky, rising northward. She smiled. For the first time that morning, because men like Marcus Whitmore always underestimated women like her. They always thought they could humiliate without consequences. They always believed that money and power were a shield against everything, and they always paid for it. Diane opened the laptop. He began writing the preliminary report, each word chosen with surgical precision, each paragraph based on federal legislation. Each accusation was documented with witnesses, cell phone videos that were already beginning to circulate on social media, and booking records. Marcus Whitmore had humiliated the wrong person, and the sky was about to fall on him, literally. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will leave your jaw dropped. 35 minutes after takeoff, Marcus Whitmore was in heaven, reclining in the Italian leather armchair, cold champagne in his right hand, Cuban cigarette in his left. Yes, he smoked inside his own jet because he could. He watched the white clouds slide past the oval window. The model sitting 3 rows back was laughing about something on her cell phone. The executive couple reviewed contracts. The lawyer was asleep. Peace, control, superiority. Exactly how Marcus liked it. Mr. Whitmore, the flight attendant, a thin blonde in an impeccable uniform, approached with a professional smile. "Would you like to have lunch now, or would you prefer to wait until we reach cruising altitude?" "Right now, darling," Marcus replied without taking his eyes off the window. "And tell the chef I want the steak rare, blood on the plate, just the way I like it." "Of course, sir." She walked away. Marcus smiled to himself, satisfied. Today had been a good day. Closed a $12 million deal before breakfast, solved that embarrassing little problem on the track, and now he was flying first class, literally, to New York, to close another billion-dollar contract. Good life. The jet's satellite phone rang. Marcus frowned. No one called that number unless it was urgent. Very urgent. The flight attendant answered, heard something, turned visibly pale and took the device to him. "Mr. Whitmore, it's the Miami control tower." Marcus picked up the phone, irritated. "Whitmore." The voice on the other end was dry, formal, emotionless. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Miami Air Traffic Control. Please be advised that your aircraft, registration November 72 Tango Whiskey, is being ordered to immediately return to the airport for an emergency security inspection." Marcus almost spat out his champagne. "What? Safety inspection? This jet underwent complete maintenance last week. Are you crazy?" "Sir, this is an order from the Federal Aviation Administration. Code Red. It is not negotiable. Your pilot has already received instructions. Return immediately or your flying license will be permanently suspended. Click. Deadline." Marcus stood still, phone still in hand, trying to process what he had just heard. The other passengers noticed the change in the weather. The model took off her headphones. The lawyer woke up. "What the hell is going on?" muttered Marcus. In the cockpit, the pilot had already received the direct order from the tower. There was no choice. He turned the jet in a gentle arc, beginning the return to Miami. The commander's voice sounded over the loudspeakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an air traffic control request, we will be returning to Miami Airport. We ask that you remain seated and with your seatbelts fastened. We will land in approximately 40 minutes. Absolute silence in the cabin. Then, explosion." "What?" Marcus stood up angrily, ripping off his belt. "I have a meeting in New York in 3 hours. This is unacceptable." He ran to the cockpit, knocked on the locked door. Mike, open that shit now. You work for me, not for the tower. Ignore this ridiculous order and continue your flight." The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but firm. "Mr. Whitmore, with all due respect, if I ignore an FAA Code Red order, I will lose my license. License permanently, and I could be arrested. I have no choice. We are returning." Marcus pounded on the door. Once, 2, 3. "Son of..." The flight attendant touched his arm, voice low. "Sir, please return to your seat. If it continues like this, it could trigger security when we land." Marcus stared at her with angry, bloodshot eyes. But there was something more there. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. Because Marcus Whitmore wasn't an idiot. I knew FAA inspectors didn't issue code reds for fun. I knew something was very, very wrong. And deep down, a small voice began to whisper a terrible question. Did that fat woman have something to do with this? No. Impossible. She was just another rebel. Just another one that would complain on social media and be forgotten in 2 days. Right? As Marcus Whitmore's jet plodded its way back to Miami, Diane Foster sat in an air-conditioned meeting room on the 3rd floor of the executive terminal. In front of him, 3 FAA inspectors were reviewing documents. Next door, 2 federal aviation agents waited for orders. Diane opened a blue folder and placed 8 printed sheets on the table. Maintenance certificate for the November 72 Tango Whiskey Jet, he said, in a technical professional voice. Signed by mechanic Richard Lawson 6 days ago. It says that all checks were carried out in accordance with federal protocol. One of the inspectors, a stout man with thick glasses, took the sheet and examined it. And what's the problem? Diane pulled out another sheet. This one had a red stamp at the top. Confidential. Anonymous report. I received this report yesterday at 11:47 p.m. Allegation that Richard Lawson was accepting bribes from Marcus Whitmore to sign false certificates. That hydraulic and pressurization inspections were not carried out. That the jet has been flying with compromised systems for 3 months. Heavy silence. The bespectacled inspector raised his eyebrows. If it's true, Diane cut in, eyes hard, that jet is a flying bomb. It may lose pressurization at any time. There may be hydraulic failure during landing. It could kill 7 people today. She stood up, placing her hands on the table. And even if the report is false, Marcus Whitmore committed illegal discrimination against a passenger with a confirmed reservation, in front of witnesses, filmed by cell phones, violated 3 federal civil aviation regulations. This alone warrants full investigation. One of the federal agents nodded. The jet is returning. It will arrive in 32 minutes. Mechanical inspection team is already on the track. Diane sat down again. He crossed his arms. His face showed no emotion, but inside something burned. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Because Diane Foster had spent 18 years of her life working to make sure planes were safe. I had investigated accidents. I had seen bodies. I had spoken to broken families. And if Marcus Whitmore was putting lives at risk out of greed, out of laziness, out of thinking that money could buy everything, he was going to learn the hardest lesson of his life. Her cell phone vibrated. Message from son Tyler. Mom, I saw it on Twitter. There's a video of you being humiliated by a billionaire on the dance floor. Everyone's talking about it. Are you okay? Diane typed back. I'm fine, love. That billionaire won't be. 32 minutes later, Marcus Whitmore's jet touched the Miami runway with squealing tires. He braked sharply, stopped at the inspection area. Immediately, 6 white vans with the FAA logo surrounded the aircraft. Marcus looked out the window and felt his stomach drop. What the fuck? He whispered. The jet door opened. An FAA inspector walked up the steps, badge on his chest, expression impassive. Mr. Marcus Whitmore, it is me. What the hell is... Sir, your aircraft is under federal investigation on suspicion of falsifying maintenance certificates and illegally discriminating against passengers. All occupants must disembark immediately. The jet is banned until further notice. Marcus turned white. This is absurd. I will sue you. I go, Sir, if you resist the federal inspection order, you will be arrested. Landing. Now. Marcus walked down the stairs on shaky legs. The other passengers followed in embarrassed silence. Cell phone cameras were already recording. Journalists began to arrive, and then Marcus saw her, Diane Foster, stopping 20 meters away, FAA badge hanging around neck, arms crossed, firm, penetrating, relentless gaze. Their eyes met, and in that moment Marcus Whitmore understood everything. She wasn't just a passenger, she was the worst person he could have humiliated. Diane didn't smile. I didn't say anything. He just watched as the team of mechanics began to disassemble parts of the jet, while inspectors went up with equipment. While real estate billionaire Marcus Whitmore is, I was standing there like a student called to the principal's office, powerless, exposed, destroyed. And the worst was yet to come, because Diane Foster didn't make empty threats. She kept promises. 45 minutes later, the FAA inspection hangar looked like an operating room. Cool white LED lights, tools spread out on metal benches, smell of grease and kerosene. Marcus Whitmore's jet was suspended on hydraulic jacks, exposed like a patient on the operating table. 5 specialized mechanics worked in silence, dismantling panels, checking connections, photographing every detail. 2 FAA inspectors watched with tablets in their hands, recording everything. Diane Foster was there, standing 3 meters from the jet, arms crossed, technical and merciless gaze. Marcus Whitmore was there too, but not by choice. He was sitting on a plastic chair in the corner of the hangar, sweating cold even with the air conditioning on. His lawyer, a short man in a gray suit and leather briefcase, was on the phone, speaking in a low, tense voice. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off Diane. She didn't look back. I was focused on work, talking to the mechanics, pointing out parts of the jet, asking technical questions, professional, cold, relentless. One of the mechanics, a black man in blue overalls and protective glasses, approached Diane holding something in his gloved hands. "Inspector Foster, we found it." Diane immediately turned around. "Show me." The mechanic lifted a hydraulic valve, small, metallic, covered in dark oil, but there was something strange about her. Fine cracks on the edges. Excessive wear. "This valve should have been replaced 6 months ago," said the mechanic in a deep voice. "She's compromised. If it failed in flight, the entire hydraulic system would collapse. No flap control, no brakes, no landing gear." Diane carefully picked up the piece and examined it under the light. "Free fall," he muttered. "Exactly." Heavy silence. Marcus heard everything. He felt his stomach turn. "That's a lie," he shouted, standing up. "You are planting evidence. I will sue every one of you." Diane turned around slowly. She looked at him for the first time since he got off the jet. His eyes were calm, almost bored. "Mr. Whitmore, you have the right to request an independent audit. You have the right to contest the results. But you have no right to interfere with a federal inspection." She took 2 steps towards him. "And if I were you, I would remain silent. Because every word that comes out of your mouth is being recorded and could be used against you in criminal proceedings." Marcus opened his mouth. It closed. It opened again. Nothing came out. The lawyer touched his arm, whispering urgently, "Marcus, for the love of God, shut up." Diane turned to the inspectors. "Continue. I want a full report in 2 hours." She left the hangar. He crossed the air-conditioned hallway to a small meeting room. He closed the door, sat down. He took a deep breath. He pulled out his cell phone and checked his notifications. 17 messages, 34 emails, 6 missed calls. The story was already exploding on social media. Billionaire humiliates plus-size woman on runway and is forced to land by FAA inspector. The videos filmed by passengers already had 500,000 views. Angry comments, hashtags going viral, journalists asking for interviews. Diane turned off her cell phone. He massaged his temples. She didn't want fame. I didn't want the spotlight. He just wanted to do his job, but men like Marcus Whitmore left no choice. The door opened. A tall man in a black suit, gray hair, military posture entered, FAA badge on chest. Robert Chen, regional supervisor. "Diane." She got up immediately. "Mr. Chen." He closed the door, sat in the opposite chair. He studied her for a moment. "You know this is going to turn into a circus, right?" "I know. Lawyers for Marcus Whitmore are already calling Washington, alleging persecution, abuse of power, saying that you set everything up because he offended you." Diane didn't look away. "I didn't set anything up. I received a legitimate anonymous tip. I attempted to board the jet as a regular passenger for discreet inspection. He illegally blocked me, so I activated emergency protocol. Everything according to regulations." Chen nodded slowly. "And the complaint? Is it solid?" "The hydraulic valve is compromised. Maintenance certificates have suspicious signatures. We're tracking down mechanic Richard Lawson now. If he confirms bribery, Marcus Whitmore faces federal criminal charges." Chen drummed his fingers on the table. "You understand that if this doesn't hold up, your career is over, right? 18 years wasted." Diane swallowed, but his voice was firm. "I understand. But if I hadn't acted and that jet crashed, killing 7 people, I would never forgive myself." Silence. Chen stood up. He placed the hand on her shoulder. "Then do it right. Document everything, triple check because they will come with everything." "Yes, sir." He left. Diane was left alone in the room. For a moment he allowed himself to feel the weight, the fear, the exhaustion. Then he pulled out the laptop, opened the files. He started working. 3 hours later, Diane was in the airport parking lot, leaning against her car. The sun was already setting, turning the sky orange and purple. She checked her cell phone. A new message. Unknown number. "Inspector Foster, I'm Richard Lawson, the mechanic. I need to speak to you. Urgent." Diane's heart quickened. She typed back, "Where?" The answer came in seconds. "Diner on 8th Street. 1 hour. Come alone, I have proof." Diane looked around. The parking lot was empty, silent, just the distant sound of planes taking off. She should warn Chen. It should take federal agents. It should follow protocol. But if Lawson got scared and disappeared, he would lose his only key witness. Diane took a deep breath, got in the car. He started the engine. An hour later, she was sitting in a red vinyl booth at the Sunset Diner, a roadside diner with flashing neon and the smell of greasy bacon in the air. Few customers. Music plays on the radio. Bored waitress cleaning counter. Then he entered. Richard Lawson was thin, in his early 40s, unshaven, with deep circles under his eyes. He wore a worn-out denim jacket and an old cap. He looked around nervously before sliding to the opposite side of the cabin. "Are you her? The inspector?" "I am. Diane Foster." He swallowed hard, hands shaking. "I didn't want to do that. I swear I didn't want to. But Marcus Whitmore, he offered me $15,000. My daughter needs surgery. I had no choice." Diane leaned forward, voice low and firm. "What exactly did you do, Richard?" He closed his eyes. I signed fake maintenance certificates 3 times in the last 6 months. He paid me to say the jet was safe when it wasn't. Hydraulic valves, pressurization system, brakes, everything was compromised. Diane felt a chill down her spine. Do you know that jet could have killed people? I know. Lawson slammed his hand on the table, eyes red. I know, and it eats at me every day. But he said he never flew above 20,000 feet, which was just short flights. That was no problem. There was a problem, Diane cut in, voice as hard as steel. And you knew that. Lawson lowered his head. I have proof. Bank transfers, emails, conversation recordings, all. He pushed a manila envelope across the table. Diane took it, opened. Inside, a pen drive and printouts of bank statements. She looked at him. Why are you doing this now? Lawson looked up. There were tears there. Because today I saw the video. I saw him humiliating you on the track. And I realized, he's always done this. He always treated everyone like trash. Mechanics, pilots, employees. And we always lowered our heads because he had money. He took a deep breath. But you didn't go down. You fought. And I realized that if I don't speak out now, I'm just as guilty as he is. Diane held the envelope tightly. You will need to testify officially, under oath. You will face charges too. I know. I'm ready. Diane nodded. She kept the envelope in her bag. Thank you, Richard. You may have saved lives today. He got up, put $20 on the table and left without looking back. Diane sat for another 5 minutes, alone, processing everything. Then he got up. He left the diner, got in the car. He held the steering wheel. He looked at the envelope on the passenger seat and smiled, because Marcus Whitmore had no idea what was about to fall on him. The storm was just beginning, and Diane Foster was the damn thing. 2 days later, federal courtroom, austere concrete building in downtown Miami, white walls, American flag hanging behind the judge's desk, air conditioning humming low, smell of old paper and cold coffee. Marcus Whitmore was sitting next to 3 expensive lawyers, new navy blue suit, silk tie, perfectly combed hair, but his hands were shaking, sweat on the forehead despite the cold environment. Across the room, Diane Foster sat alone, simple gray blazer, hair tied up, brown folder on the table in front of you, calm, almost serene expression. She didn't need lawyers. She had the truth. The federal judge, a black woman in her 60s, thick-rimmed glasses, imposing posture, banged the gavel. Emergency hearing initiated. FAA v. Marcus Whitmore case. Accusations of falsifying federal documents, bribing a public official, and illegally discriminating against passengers. One of Marcus's lawyers stood up immediately. Your Honor, I would like to record that my client vehemently denies all allegations. This is a persecution driven by personal resentment on the part of Inspector Foster who, sit down, Judge cut in, voice as hard as stone. I will hear the evidence first. Inspector Foster, present your opening. Diane stood up. There was no nervousness in his movements, just cold, precise determination. Your Honor, I will present 3 sets of evidence that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Marcus Whitmore put lives at risk through greed and arrogance. She opened the folder, removed documents, spread it on the table. First evidence, falsified maintenance certificates. Mechanic Richard Lawson confessed, under oath and with immunity granted, that Marcus Whitmore paid him $15,000 on 3 occasions to sign documents certifying the safety of equipment that was never inspected. Absolute silence. Diane held up a document. He approached the judge's table. Here are the bank statements showing transfers from Marcus Whitmore to Richard Lawson. Dates exactly match the signatures on the certificates. We also have audio recordings where Marcus explicitly calls for forgery. She touched a button on the laptop. Marcus's voice filled the room. Cell phone recording. Reasonable quality. Richard, listen, I don't have time for all this bureaucracy. You sign the paper, I pay $15,000, and no one needs to know. The jet is flying fine, there's no problem. Marcus paled. His lawyers looked at each other desperate. Second piece of evidence, Diane continued relentlessly. Compromised hydraulic valve, found during inspection. 3 independent mechanics certified that the part was in critical condition. Imminent failure. If it had ruptured during flight, it would have resulted in total loss of control of the aircraft. She placed enlarged photos on the table. The valve cracked, worn connections, devastating technical close-ups. 7 people were on that jet. 7 lives that Marcus Whitmore put at risk because saving $30,000 on maintenance was more important. The judge studied the photos. His expression hardened. Third piece of evidence. Diane turned to Marcus for the first time. His eyes were cold, piercing, unforgiving, illegal discrimination. On the morning of October 10th, Marcus Whitmore barred me from boarding a shared charter flight with a confirmed reservation solely because of my body weight. In front of witnesses, filmed by multiple devices. She touched another button. The large screen on the wall lit up. High-definition video. Marcus shouting on the track, "You can't even fit in the seat. My plane has standards. People your size don't get on here." The video played. Every second, every poisonous word, every expression of contempt. When he finished, the silence was deafening. Marcus was destroyed. Red face, hands shaking. One of the lawyers whispered something urgent in his ear, but he didn't even react. Diane turned to the judge. Marcus Whitmore violated 3 federal aviation regulations, endangered civilian lives, and committed blatant discrimination. The FAA requests permanent suspension of his aircraft owner's license, a $500,000 fine, and a full criminal investigation. She sat down. The judge looked at Marcus. "Mr. Whitmore, do you wish to defend yourself?" Marcus stood still, dry mouth, broken brain. One of the lawyers stood up, his voice desperate. "Your Honor, my client. There was a misunderstanding." He was stressed. The words were unfortunate, but they did not reflect. Silence. The judge banged the gavel. "I saw the evidence. I listened to the recordings. I saw the bank documents. There is no misunderstanding here. There is crime." She leaned forward. "Marcus Whitmore, you used your money and power to circumvent federal security laws. It put lives at risk. He humiliated a public servant in the performance of his role, and he did all this believing he would be above the consequences." Dramatic pause. "You were wrong." Marcus closed his eyes. "I knew what was coming. I order immediate and permanent suspension of your license to operate private aircraft. Fine of $750,000 to be paid to the FAA within 30 days. And I refer this case to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation for falsification of federal documents and bribery." Hammer hit. Sound echoed like gunshot. Hearing closed. Marcus Whitmore slumped in his chair. Their lawyers started talking at the same time, trying to do damage control, but it was too late. He was ruined. Diane Foster put the documents in her briefcase. He got up. He walked towards the exit. As he passed Marcus, he looked up. There was hate there, despair, and something else. Repentance. You destroyed my life," he whispered, voice broken. Diane stopped. He turned around slowly. He looked at him from top to bottom. There was no triumph in his expression, just absolute coldness. "No," she said, her voice low but clear. "You destroyed your own life when you decided that people like me didn't deserve respect. When he decided that money could buy everything. When I decided," he said, "that 7 human lives were worth less than $30,000. She bowed slightly. "I just did my job." He turned and left. Outside the court, a crowd of journalists waited. Cameras, microphones, flashes, question shouts. "Inspector Foster, how do you feel? Was this personal revenge? Are you going to sue Marcus Whitmore for moral damages?" Diane stopped at the top of the stairs. He took a deep breath. He looked at the cameras. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Marcus Whitmore put lives at risk and violated federal laws. The FAA exists to ensure that planes are safe, that passengers are treated with dignity, and that no one, no matter how much money they have, is above the law. Pause. "And to anyone who has ever been humiliated because of their body, you are not the problem. The problem is people like Marcus Whitmore, and they always pay." She walked down the stairs to applause, got in the car, drove home. When he arrived, Tyler was waiting at the door, his teenage son eyes shining with pride. "Mom, you're awesome." Diane laughed. For the first time in days, he actually laughed. "Language, young man." He hugged her tightly, serious. "Everyone at school saw it. You're like superhero now." Diane held her son's face in her hands. "I'm not a superhero, love. I only did what was right. That's what makes you a superhero." She hugged him again. He closed his eyes. He felt the weight of the last few days finally ease. Justice had been done, and the lesson was taught. That night, while Diane was preparing dinner and Tyler was doing homework, her cell phone rang. Robert Chen, regional supervisor. "Diane, did you see the news?" "No. Why?" "Marcus Whitmore just announced his resignation from every company board he served on. $3 billion contracts were canceled. His company's shares plummeted 40%. Silence. And there's more. Richard Lawson agreed to cooperate fully. The Justice Department opened an investigation into other private jets Marcus owned. They found more fakes, more bribes. This is going to be full federal." Diane sat down slowly. "How many jets?" 5. Potentially 50 passengers at risk in the last 2 years. Diane closed her eyes. He thought about all those people, families, executives, tourists, all flying around ticking time bombs because a man who was too rich and too arrogant thought the rules didn't apply to him. "You saved lives, Diane," Chen said, his voice deep and serious. "Many lives." She swallowed hard. "Thank you, sir." "No, thank you." Turned off. Diane sat in the kitchen, hearing Tyler's noise in the room, the hum of the refrigerator, distant traffic, and for the first time in a long time he felt like he had made a difference, real, concrete, permanent. Marcus Whitmore had tried to destroy her, and he ended up destroying himself. Poetic justice, the best of all.